Today in Aristeia 99, we're talking about Laxmee. Laxmee is the third character in the Soldier's Fortune expansion, so let's go over her stats really quick. She's got an initiative of 5, movement of 4, energy of 5, like you would expect, and health of 2. Oh my gosh, she is squishy. Now this is actually going to be compounded a little bit by the fact that her defense roll is 2 yellows and a black. Now obviously her in any sort of combat is going to be a bad idea. But on the plus side, you're more likely to get your switch. She's a very delicate character. And while similar to Gato in that she has low health, her defense does not compare. So you do want to keep that in mind. Her brawl roll is a blue, which is surprisingly good actually, given the role she has. She also has, for her disengage, an orange and an exclamation point. This plays directly into her switch for 2 bangs. If you are the active character, gain 1 movement point. So if she is able to disengage, there's a good chance she'll get extra movement out of it. It's not guaranteed, but it's pretty good. Likewise with her defensive role, well, honestly, it's not really going to come up in her defensive role, to be honest, because she won't be the active character pretty much most of the time. So we're going to go into her first green ability. In fact, she's got no attacks. Similar to Gata, similar to Hexer, you are using her for things other than blowing up faces, at least directly. So debuffer costs 1 energy. You get 3 yellow dice, but it has a range of 0 to 5 with no line of sight requirements. That's really important because, hey, I don't need line of sight. So, well, I guess I can't be dazzled from this. I guess you're on the other side of this obstacle. That's not a problem. You're on the other side of Maximus. This is not a problem. So this is a good thing. You do, of course, need to get 1 success. You get decent odds of that. And really what happens is you get that success, you will impose the stunned state or the focus state to the target. Now, the stun state reduces your opponent's roll by 1 success. It automatically cancels 1. That's really good. We like this. On top of that, you can think about the focus state. Now, focus is kind of nice because if you want to, you can actually cash it in at any time for a yellow die. This is a buff status. But it does play into fairy dust, which we're going to get into in just a moment. Now, what makes her more interesting, though, is she's got 2 switches on debuffer. The first one is 1 shield and 3 exclamation points. You get to impose the stun states to a target within range 1 to 4, and again, no line of sight required. Likewise, if you get 4 bangs, you can impose the focus states to a target within range 0 to 4. So she can actually impose this on herself. Rather nice. So what you're doing here, right, actually, really, when you're using debuffers, you're deciding if you're using it to buff or debuff, or possibly both. So obviously Laxmee will enjoy the focus state. She'll also enjoy anything that adds yellows to her roll. She's looking for successes, sure, but what she really gets the biggest bang for her buck, so to speak, is when she hits her switches alongside it. There's a chance you might get no successes but hit the switch. That's okay. You can, I wouldn't say you'd want to fall back on that, but you could. It is within the realm of possibility. But the idea of being able to do 2 actions for really only spending 1 energy is really nice. So, can't really say no to that. Next up is Purge 92. This costs 1 energy. You get an orange, you get a yellow, and it's range 0 to 5, no line of sight. Now, Purge 92 lets you remove 1 state token from the target. So, we've talked about this before with Parvati. I am always going to get that name wrong. In that you can use this not only to remove detrimental states from your teammates, but also use them to remove beneficial ones from opponents. This is kind of nice, and at only 1 energy, she does not beat out the core set originals in this ability in terms of clearing everything out. But it's inexpensive, it does not require line of sight, and she can use it on herself. This is pretty good. There's no switch for the ability. So her last ability is Fairy Dust. This is an orange, this is a passive. And at the beginning of an action step of an ally, any of your allies may remove a focus token on them to remove 1 other state token on themselves. Now this is the nice thing about that, is you can give out the focus tokens, the focus state to your teammates, and they can choose to use it for the additional yellow die, which is great, or to remove 1 status by basically cashing it in. This is really important when you look at really all the things that her teammates have to offer. Hannibal not being able to have line of sight, say he's dazzled, getting rid of that is excellent. If you look at Valkyrie and say she is hit with stunned, getting back the success makes it easier for her to use not only her attacks, but frostbite. And of course, Senior Massacre, who is silenced, or really anybody who's silenced, probably wants to get rid of that as quickly as possible. So this is actually a really powerful ability, and I think when you look at what Debuffer and Fairy Dust have to offer your team, right off the bat, before you even get to tactics, she offers you a lot. This is a fantastic setup. The trade-off being is her defense is really poor, and she has no real attacks aside from Contender. So, speaking of tactics, first off we're going to do the 4 Kaleidoscope. During the action step of Laxmee's activation, impose the stunned state to all enemies within range 1 to 7, no line of sight required. That could be a game changer right there. Certainly if you're in a clutch moment or you're coming from behind, you have a support heavy opposition, the ability to basically reduce all their successes by 1 automatically. It doesn't matter where they are so long as they're within 1 to 7. That's, when you really look at it, as a 14 hex diameter. That's pretty amazing. And the biggest thing is this is during Laxmee's turn. She has to be active to use it. And this would be a great reason to make sure she is not on the playing field. So this is something you would want to look out for if you're playing against her, and be mindful of, because this will pretty much get everyone except for Major Luna, who does have her sniper rifle at range 3 to 8. And again, with no line sight requirements, Laxmee can be hiding behind other characters, behind terrain for the most part. Smoke is not going to bother her. This is very powerful, very awesome. Next up, we have got Team Upgrade. This is another Laxmee specific card. During the action step of Laxmee's activation, impose the focus state to all your allies in Hexadome. Now there's two things with this. First of all, there's no range in terms of hexes for this ability. And there's no line of sight requirement. They only have to be in the Hexadome. Now, that being said, if they're on the bench or in the infirmary, they will not benefit from this. It seems kind of obvious to say, but it does need to be said. You will do more for a full team that's on the field than one or two of them being on the bench. If Laxmee's by herself, well, I'm not even sure I would use it in that case. But there you go. Adam is her next tactics card. Before you, your opponent, and they have a typo, before your opponent makes a roll, choose an orange, a blue, or yellow die from your opponent's roll. Your opponent's roll is reduced to that die only. Your opponent cannot add any more dice to their roll. So that is kind of horrifying. Really, when you're looking at that, so basically you're taking out any green. If they have a green or if they have a red, you're taking that out. You're taking out automatic successes. You're taking out the critical success. You're taking out the critical defense, and you can basically stick them to the least opportune roll that they have. The nice thing about this is it's not tied to Laxmee per se, but it is tied to your opponent's roll. So if they are not rolling against you, say they're using a tactic or something, or they're doing something that would force you to make a roll, then it doesn't necessarily help. You have to get them to make the roll. Then you can play this dirty little trick on them. This could be, I mean, honestly, if something was that important, I would play Adam. I would kind of expect a no to come out of that. But because of the advent of TCOM and Sterling Forge, that's not as big as a risk as it could be. So no, this is actually a very good card, and because it's not tied to Laxmee, it's tied to your team. When your opponent's making a roll, I think this is actually a really good card to have. If it's something you can fish back out, so much the better. Really the big benefit to me when you're looking at this is when you're combining it with Stunned, for instance, you can greatly decrease your chances of getting a success. And because really, if they're trying to get a success, you don't want them to have that orange die. Or if you don't want them to get a double block, you make sure they don't get the blue die. If you're trying to stop them from getting a switch, you make sure they don't get the yellow die. You can play around with this in a bunch of different ways. Finally, her last tactic would be Team Reset. During the action step of one of your character's activations, so anybody in your team, remove all states from your allies in the Hexadome. And again, there's no range on this, but they have to be in the Hexadome. So really it's kind of, if she is, say, in the last in line, and you get characters coming back from the infirmary, from the bench, she can clear off those really annoying -2 states. If you get taunted to hell and back, Bonsai Zap and I had a great game of King of the Hill, and he taunted pretty much everybody, except the people I wanted wanted to be taunted. That I was okay with, and especially if in that particular team lineup he had Prism forcing the attack because of her beacon light ability, so you can get rid of all the taunts. This is fantastic. It's not. I think the biggest thing is you don't have to roll for it, and again, there's no range, so you can look at it as being nice and saving you your abilities for your energy for using debuffer and buffing people instead of using purge. So it helps with her efficiency. It's almost giving her a free go if you got a lot of states loaded up. So that's Laxmee. She is, I mean, if you're going to look at the old MMORPG tank, DPS, and healer or support, she's totally right there in support. Used to be a City Heroes player. You want to keep her alive. She does a lot of great things for your team, and the fact that she can throw out very inexpensively debuffs onto the other team, that's great. That's fantastic. But you have to keep in mind her fragility. So you want to keep her behind or around the corner, as the case may be. If you can add in characters like, say, Hannibal, who will give her an additional orange to make sure she gets her successes, especially because there are other characters that can hand out the stun status. That's pretty good. And really, another die for more successes or more switches never hurts. Again, her defense is poor. Both her ability to avoid damage and her ability to take damage. So if you do bring her in, you are going to have to choose her teammates accordingly. If they can't keep her protected one way or another, she'll be kind of tough to keep alive. You do not want her close up. She's similar to Hannibal in that regard. But thankfully, she doesn't have to be as close as Hannibal, and unlike Hannibal, she doesn't have to have line of sight to use her good stuff. So that's Laxmee. Merry Christmas, by the way. We're recording this on Christmas Eve, and, 2019's been a great year for Aristeia. We're looking forward to 2020 and seeing what new characters come down, what new modes. We just got the new map, for instance. But please, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment, and we'll see you next time when we cover Senor Massacre. Aloha from Maui.